One of my expectations for Zen 6 are price per core goes down, but they do raise prices per tier. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. This episode is brought to you by Micro Center and their July 4th savings event, and then also JLC PCB, who is offering a $10 coupon below. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty good. Right before I came up, I was downstairs getting some tea, and I saw my girlfriend fiddling with the remote, and she said, I don't know why the TV was on when I came in. And then I saw Jesse on the ground next to the remote, and now I can't get the remote to work. And I'm like, great, guess I'll go to work. But she did just text me and say it was the batteries. I guess she knocked them loose when she... My guess would be maybe she jumped on the coffee table, because she does this to look out windows, as you've seen, and was like watching my girlfriend like take out the trash or do something in the yard, because she has to know what we're doing at all times, our dog. And then, probably knocked the remote off of the coffee table and made us a little stressed out. So that was cool.
Suspiciously had the channel turned to Melanois videos or something.
Which is just cops or firefighters doing things. Because
or she just turned it to a rerun of Cops or something. And she's just like, yeah.
Those who don't know, Belgian Malinois are like combat dogs that basically all police enforcement organizations use at this point, and it's hilarious. It's clearly in her blood. If a firefighter, a cop, someone delivering mail who's confident goes by, she's on board with whatever they're up to and likes watching them do things. Like random people. She tends to not. We're in Nashville, of course, so we'll have musicians like walk by our house. Doesn't seem to like musicians. I don't know what that tells you, but like they'll be like loading up a car near our house or something to go to a gig. I don't know why they park near us, maybe to go to some restaurant. I don't know. And then she will just start barking and be mad they're near our house. But then there was recently some incident, near us, and there were cops checking out something. Totally on board with the lights on, them walking around, just like standing there smiling like, can I help? But anyways, this is supposedly a gaming hardware podcast, so we should probably move on from dog talk. Although I have to say, based on what I've seen in the comments, the dog talk, the cat talk too, it's definitely welcomed by our community.
And with the odd person every once in a while I've seen that hates it. I remember early on there were people.
I haven't seen that recently. Maybe early.
It's very long since I remember it, but I remember one time we were doing a live stream and some guy was just pissed that there were dogs on screen in the background.
Oh, was it live stream? Was this back when I lived in Peoria?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that. I don't remember that, but yes, there was that couch behind us, and so our dogs would often just pop up and look at us while we're recording.
Yeah, and this one commenter was just like, dogs are disgusting the entire time in the chat, and I was like, okay, that's an interesting response.
I mean, look, I hope you come here for the gaming hardware. You're allowed to think whatever you want, and everyone's welcome here, but if you don't like dogs, no offense, you're in the minority. You're in the minority of this community, and
just keep it to yourself. That's all I ask.
Probably not going to win a lot of fights on the internet if you start hating on cats or dogs. I think
I think most people like them.
But anyways, speaking of animals, let us move on to a mythical animal with a Krackan 2 leak as story number 1. All right, so I don't have much of a write-up here. I'm just going to get straight to a quote that was sent to me actually today, a few hours ago. This person told me, this week, AMD will launch the Ryzen AI 5 3030 with 4 cores, 8 threads, 8 megabytes of L3 cache, 2 gigahertz base clock, 4.5 gigahertz boost clocks, and a full 50 TOPS NPU. yet only 2 RDNA 3.5 compute units labeled as the 820M. It also has a 15 to 28 watt TDP, so pretty low. And so this is arguably the long overdue successor to budget Zen 2 and RDNA 2 Mendocino APUs. And I've seen some things popping up that I think this launch might happen soon. I guess I don't know if I'm the first to break this story. A lot of people talking about cut down Strix, but if I look around, and I just Googled around here, you can see that HXL on Twitter a couple weeks ago leaked Little Krackan or Krackan 2 specs that exactly line up with these specs. And so despite what some people may report, I believe this is Krackan 2 and not cut down Strix. I don't have this from my source, but according to HXL, it's one Zen 5 core with 3 Zen 5C cores with a unified 8 megabytes of L3 cache. And so, yeah, I don't know. There you go. I think this is long overdue. I think me and you have been talking for a while. Where the heck is the successor to Mendocino? And this will probably be in sub $500 laptops. So I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
I mean, certainly doesn't look like cut down Strix based on its configuration, but no, I don't know. We need the sub $500 PCs, so I welcome more little architectures like this, or not architectures, little dies like this.
Yeah, I think something that's interesting to note that really sticks out to me is I believe Little Phoenix had 4 compute units, and then it also had 2 Zen 4 and 4 Zen 4C. So this is definitely even a bit smaller than that, even though it's called Krackan 2, which I guess it would, because Krackan's below the Strix, unlike Hawk, which was kind of what Strix was, but a little weaker kind of for its time. It's a weird ebb and flowing of this roadmap that's going on. And so I don't know exactly what the die size will be, but I believe, if I'm thinking about this, Strix was like, what, 232? So this has a fourth the cores. Yeah, I mean, almost fully exact. Well, a third the cores, but less than half the C, 1/4 the full 5 that Strix Point has, and then
a pretty small iGPU. I mean, this is
and then an eighth
tiny.
the GPU. So I could definitely see this being around 100 millimeter squared or smaller, and the question will be how much of that is really taken up by the NPU. But I don't know. It's interesting. It depends how you look at it. It's really not that interesting because no one's probably going to use this for gaming. Although, again, these usually, I believe, just have a normal 128-bit memory bus that's the same as Strix Point. And so I've seen in some games Mendocino punch way above what you think 2 compute units should be able to do. I think that will be interesting to watch for this. But even if it's not that interesting to gamers, as long as this goes into the same notebooks Mendocino was in, which is, $300 notebook sometimes, this is actually quite a hilariously huge upgrade. And I think that's important when we look at like what the baseline is for like developers. I think developers usually mostly ignore these types of products. But if you're someone like Fortnite or Minecraft, you're not ignoring these types of products.
I mean, yeah, that's an absolute lowest common denominator game where, yeah, you kind of want that to run on everything at this point.
But it reminds me of like Arrow Lake when we were like, on the surface, mobile Arrow Lake wasn't that impressive. They were bragging about like barely losing to AMD's cut down Strix Point APU. But I said, actually, this is probably just as big of a deal as Strix Point because before this, and unfortunately, well, I guess still actually, now that I think about it, they're still mostly using Raptor Lake, so maybe I should take this back. But at the time, I was thinking this replacing Raptor Lake is a big deal because we're like doubling, tripling the integrated graphics performance of what a fourth of like half of laptops or more than half of laptops have, which is going to raise the bar a ton. So I don't know. This is a minimum I think is still kind of interesting. And to be honest, I know there were a couple of budget gaming handhelds that had not Little Phoenix, I believe. What did it have? It had Mendocino, yeah. And it never really went anywhere. I would still be very curious if someone could pump out like a PS Pico like thing that was like $200-300 and had this. And if this was just barely able to, whatever the Steam Deck can run in it's not 720p, whatever it is. I think it's like 800p or something. This runs in 480p on some tiny little display or something. I'd be interested to see where this goes in those sorts of form factors as well.
Yeah, I mean, I of course am interested to see how this performs in gaming, but yeah, less than, I don't know, 8 compute units, I generally for gaming don't find that interesting. Like maybe 4, you could press it a little bit, but I
It's just,
feel
you'd be
like 8 is
surprised which games.
true like base entry level at this point. But
yeah, but let me think. So if that's, I just to put a bow on this, 1.3. I mean, yeah, they are over doubling performance per core compared to Mendocino, and the integrated graphics are probably a solid like 30-50% faster. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's still worth pointing out, though, like if this becomes the standard in sub $500 notebooks, maybe probably even sub $400 notebooks, this is long overdue and quite a bit stronger than what you could get before. And, look, it's 4 Zen 5 cores, modern graphics, even if it's crazy weak, and a fully fledged NPU. It probably feels like a Strix Halo laptop to some people and a few things.
And better than more Radeon, I suppose. An actual new architecture at the base level rather
That's
than
another good point as well.
Rather than just rebadging their old stuff and calling it a new architecture or calling it a new product.
I am Patty Cakes writes in and says, so are NPUs going to be just a laptop only thing for Intel and AMD for the foreseeable future? They're pretty much useless right now on laptop, and I don't see the software support side changing much when there's still going to be a large cohort of people who won't be able to utilize any of these features. Raptor Lake's vastly outselling Arrow Lake right now. It's sad because they're missing on desktops and workstations. I feel like it'd be more reasonable to do an all or nothing approach, as well as having more than half-ass SDKs and examples. I think, look, it's a mostly laptop thing. I've leaked that Arrow Lake Refresh might get a fully fledged NPU on desktop at the end of this year in some models. So that's something there. And there's definitely a possibility that Olympic Ridge, which we're going to talk about in a second, Zen 6 desktop, might have a fully fledged NPU as well. So my answer to you is probably not. This is probably going to become more and more standard on desktop. By the end of next year, actually, is what I think. And even if Olympic Ridge doesn't have it, or some of them don't, like I would suspect like the budget ones don't have the nice IO die, the expensive ones do. I would just say it doesn't matter that much. It's the NPU is ultimately there to save energy in a laptop. And laptops are like a substantial amount of the market share of PCs. So I don't think them not being in desktops is what's going to stop developers from supporting them.
Yeah, I do just think they're more essential in or potentially more essential on laptops, where if you want a lot of AI processing power, I mean, every desktop has a graphics card at this point. So just that's where that comes from. And I just think that makes an NPU less essential.
Angel of Cake writes and says, Tom, you speak often of USB-C powered laptops and battery packs. I think you speak of witchcraft. Almost every laptop I see is still running barrel jack connectors. Do you have any insight into when we'll be rid of the scourge of barrel jack connectors and their associated bricks? When will we finally walk in the light of ubiquitous USB-C plugs and connectors? Yours uses USB-C, right? Your Asus laptop?
I mean, I think that, like, even pretty cheap laptops these days I'm seeing are using mostly USB-C or have it as an option. Like, so I guess my question would be where Angel of Cake is, because I think most modern laptops allow it as an option these days.
So I went to Amazon bestseller laptops, and the top one here is a MacBook Air 13-inch with M4 for $850. I guess it's kind of reasonably priced. Yeah. I mean, there you go. There's your Thunderbolt ports for charging. Like, believe that's what MacBook does. So there you go. You got USB-C with Apple, and that's the top selling one on Amazon. Followed up, no surprise, a very cheap one. Look at that. Mendocino. What ports do we have here? Barrel charger, unfortunately.
Okay.
I know. I thought for sure maybe this would just be USB-C. And then we have a Chromebook. I believe this Chromebook is USB-C. And then we have a gaming Acer Nitro with an RTX 4050 6GB. Seems actually pretty overpriced. I'm sad. This is the top one. Yeah, and then there's a barrel charger. And then but it has a Type-C port on it that I believe also allows you to use USB-C charging. So there you go. This is not a perfect, analysis, but I pulled up 4 of like the top 10 selling laptops at random. 3/4 of them seem to allow USB-C.
Yeah, and I know I can't remember how the EU regulations work. Yeah, I believe that it's a bit later than what they're requiring for phones, but if I'm remembering correctly, the EU is requiring USB-C for laptops even. So my guess would
Wait,
be
really? Did you just pull that up?
yeah. Let me make sure this isn't AI slop though.
I see. So that was the Google.
Yeah.
Let me put this down too.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be by next year they're going to require USB-C in laptops, I believe. So, yeah, that this is from Europa.eu. So I think that you're going to see it become very ubiquitous soon as the EU requires you to do that.
Yeah, but and so when I didn't.
Next April of next year.
Oh, well, so yeah, by the end of next year, it's going to basically be all of that. Now, some of them will still come with both. There are like reliability, sustained power reasons. A gaming laptop might want both USB-C and a barrel option. Like that is a real thing. And does yours have both as well? Your Asus laptop, it has an input for a normal charger and
no,
USB-C.
it's just USB-C.
It's just USB. Okay,
yeah.
Because I think I had one that was both recently, or saw one that was both. Or I think it's my girlfriend's work laptop. It's both. Like you still might see that as an option on there, and then you just might have the barrel charger where you're at home for stable power, and then when you're on the go, you can leave the chargers at home moving forward. So we're basically already there.
Mm-hmm.
Techno writes in, why is it that Zen 5 Mobile only supports PCIe 4.0? I understand why Zen 4 Mobile didn't have 5.0, as it had only just come to desktop. But Zen 5 not having it, especially since Intel has supported it since Raptor Lake, which is January of 2023 on mobile. Even Zen 5, if it just had 4 lanes of 5.0 for an SSD, it would be good just so they could say that they haven't. No. Well, first of all, Fire Range, which because it uses the same IO die as the desktop variants, that does have support for a 5.0 SSD. But, I was talking with Karino Sugata, contributor to Moore's Law is Dead, while preparing these notes, and we both agree it's just for power savings here. And if you go, well, wouldn't it be a nice checkbox? Maybe, but I don't think most people, when they're looking at what laptop they want to buy, are like, thank God it has a Gen 5 SSD. And if you're AMD, Gen 4 is more efficient. And I thought of this today. Also, no GPUs until right now with Blackwell have 5.0, and I think RDNA 4 have 5.0 support. So if every graphics card in mobile up until just recently was using 4.0, really what is the point in having 5.0 for the graphics side as well? And then, and I think this is very important, if OEMs standardize on like Gen 4 SSDs like a year or two ago. Like before that, they were still mostly using 3.0, and Gen 5 SSDs, I can assure you, I use them. They do require some cooling to hit the speeds they want. That would be even considered better than 4.0, really, right now. So if you're an OEM, you're like, we don't really stock a lot of Gen 5 SSDs for laptops, and they require more cooling, and they pull more power. So if you're AMD, you're like, what really is the point? No OEMs going to want to pay extra to put this SSD into a laptop that then also requires more expensive cooling and will make the battery life worse. So I think that's your answer right now. Now, I think they'll probably do it with Medusa or something moving forward. But up until now, it doesn't actually seem that crazy to me they don't have it.
Yeah, especially given that, like, I don't think that many applications really even utilize Gen 5 speeds that well anyways, if at all. So I don't know. It makes sense to be a thing that you would axe up until this point.
In fact, if I may, one of the biggest reasons you might have wanted Gen 5 and their APUs moving forward is so this, Krackan 2 APU I just leaked. I mean, it would be so that you could sell it on desktop with 5.0 support for a graph. Like that's really actually the biggest reason you would do it right now, in my opinion. And that's unfortunately, despite that being the type of thing me and you would talk about for 30 minutes, because we're PC gaming dorks, that is not something most people worry about.
No.
All right. Let us now move on from all of this mobile talk to more desktop gaming oriented discussion. Story number 2, AMD Zen 6 specs confirmed by multiple leakers. Just quoting TechSpot here because I thought they did a really good write-up. Yuri Bubali, creator of the Hydra tuning software, revealed on his official Discord that engineering samples of Zen 6 have already reached AMD's industry partners. I've already leaked this, by the way. According to Bubali, Zen 6 is best described as an evolution of Zen 5 rather than a complete overhaul. Yep, that's what I've leaked. The new architecture brings a notable increase in CPU core counts per chiplets, which could be 12 cores per CCD as expected, which would then bring you to 24 cores and 48 threads when two CCDs are paired together on a desktop package. Importantly, Bubali emphasized that there are no major changes expected for the boosting algorithm or the curve optimizer feature, both staples of enthusiasts who fine-tune their systems. And is he reassured that Hydra support for Zen 6 will be straightforward and that new CPUs will remain compatible with existing AM5 motherboards. This stands in contrast to Intel's upcoming Nova Lake S processors, which are rumored to require new sockets and motherboards. Now, while one Usamis focuses on architectural refinements, Moore's Law is dead, on the other hand, highlighted AMD's aggressive push for higher clock speeds and advanced manufacturing in a recent video. Tom reported that AMD is internally testing Zen 6 desktop CPUs that already achieve 6.4 gigahertz with an ambitious target of surpassing, underline that by the way, surpassing, not stopping at, 7 gigahertz on the high-end N2X process node from TSMC. This would represent the highest clocked x86 processor AMD, or anyone to my knowledge, has ever produced, and a dramatic leap over the current Zen 4 or Zen 5 5.7 gigahertz peak. The YouTuber explains that only the top-tier desktop variants will likely use the node, which is an enhanced, the N2X that is, which is an enhanced version of TSMC's 2-nanometer process. Other Zen 6 products, such as Medusa point APUs, Venice-class EPYC server chips, rely on more mature N2P or N3 nodes, depending on which one you're talking about. These chips may not reach the same raw frequencies, therefore, but are expected still to deliver notable gains in efficiency and performance per watt. For mobile platforms, clock speeds could easily be 6.2 or 6.5 gigahertz, while not 7 gigahertz. That is still a substantial uplift over current generation mobile processors. And so, yep, I like that because it involved other leakers that put out stuff this week and also summarized what I leaked in a live stream, which, long story short, Dan, we can say it out loud. 7 gigahertz.
Oh, I thought you were going to say vampire, but
yeah, not that I like Twilight at all, but I do think I do think it's kind of like that
for some reason.
But we do use that reference all the time because that became a meme. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean that's what it's felt like though. That Twilight meme is like I've known about this, for at least a month, if not more.
Yeah,
and it's been something I've hinted at, something I've just openly brought up to guests, like, hey, let's say if I knew that Zen 6 is going to hit 7 gigahertz, what would you think of what that would mean for gaming, without actually saying I've heard that. But as I explained in the loose ends that just came out, and again, if you haven't watched that, please watch that section. I put a lot of thought into the write-up for it. Like, recently I got, when I say recently, I think the day of or the day before I put out that live stream, I got multiple sources saying it really is going for above 7 gigahertz. Again, I'm actually still being a little cagey. I'm not going to tell you what it was, but the way I put it is 7 gigahertz is not the top. It's the middle of the range they're aiming for. Mm-hmm. And they've already achieved 6.4. So, what that tells you is it could go well above it. And I didn't want to talk about that until I heard stuff like that. Like not only could they hit 7 gigahertz, but they could go quite a bit above 7 gigahertz. And so that's not crazy to talk about anymore. And because it's very, very likely at this point.
Yeah, I mean, especially given that now it's starting to leak out from multiple people. Yeah, I think I don't have too much to say that I haven't already said, but it's exciting that this seems to be materializing, and we actually might see a 7 gigahertz processor or close to it come out next year.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say is I saw some people joking on Twitter and probably other places that like, well, targets, I target doing a lot of things that I never get. And guys, target doesn't mean stretch goal. Target means like not quite, I would describe it as like a constraint they have to achieve where they've failed, but it's kind of close to that. Like this isn't like AMD going, oh, we hope we hit it. They're putting a lot of resources into getting there. And in fact, their goal is well above 7 gigahertz. I'm saying it is well above. If they do that, my mind was blown. But, multiple sources, proof, documentation, multiple parts of AMD telling me this. this is happening, people. Will it be, 7, 1, 2, 3? Will it barely just lose at 6.8, 6.9 gigahertz? I don't know, but it's not 6.2, and they're trying to hit above 7. And I think that's crazy. And, like I said in the live stream, another thing I said I should say, like, I think I've been pretty restrained in this. Like, a lot of leakers, if they ever had this information, would tweet it within a millisecond of hearing it. But I knew how insane 7 gigahertz looked, and so I waited until a lot of people confirmed. So I don't know. I don't know. I just think I have to say that, though. This is not me just screaming about something that might happen. It probably will.
Yeah, I mean, 7 gigahertz is quite the uplift in clock speeds. That's the biggest I can think of in a long time, right?
I mean, look, I believe AMD increased it over. It depends how you look at it, right? Because
early Zen, I guess, was a lot lower clock, so that's not quite right.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like, I know this would be gen over gen, probably the biggest if they hit 7,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going more nodes than usual gens would. Like the thing I said, another thing I said in the loose ends that I saw some websites pointing out, because I was happy they did. Sometimes I don't like they just clip the headline and they miss the explanation. The explanations on a lot of websites were very good this time. Like, they pointed out that I said, if you think about Zen Plus to Zen 4, that was 12 nanometer to 7 nanometer to 5. This is 4 to 3 to 2x.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or 4, I should say. Yeah, so I put one extra finger, but it's basically the same amount of jumps. And from Zen Plus, or if you want to even count it Zen 1, I mean, that was over a 20% uplift in clocks. And so it is not without precedence. AMD has done this before.
Mm-hmm.
And one final thing to say that occurred to me today is, one thing that I've consistently heard that AMD still loses on right now with a reason they lose out on a lot of contracts is, despite most server companies wanting efficiency, dense core counts with a ton of RAM, they don't need it to hit more than really 3 gigahertz half the time, that there are still these niche and very lucrative contracts they could be getting from, like, high frequency traders.
Mm-hmm.
The people where they will buy an apartment next to the New York Stock Exchange and try to get the closest one, so that millisecond, there's like, they're talking nanoseconds here in difference in high frequency trading. And in that case, I had actually a guest on who's a high frequency trader, server engineer, recently. Or I shouldn't say recently, years ago. He talked about, like Ice Lake X was something they were looking for because it went really fast.
Yeah.
And that was still something AMD continues to lose out on. There's also, like, gaming. I know Matt from Alderon Games has talked about why they used Raptor Lake in their servers for their games, just because, well, most of the time the thing that had a smoother experience was just having something constantly at around 6 gigahertz. This is the final thing Intel can claim, and it would make sense this would be the generation to do this. AMD went for the easiest thing first that Intel was neglecting: core counts.
Yeah.
And then they went for, like, maximizing efficiency, density, and all these, and then they, like, improved the latency with Zen 3. They went to higher clocks with Zen 4, but Zen 4 was a pretty notable node jump, and it was just they weren't going to a fully new architecture. It would make sense this would be the generation they try to just destroy clock speeds as well.
Yeah, and we might finally get the promise of 10 gigahertz, Tom, in several years.
I don't think it's Zen 8, although I know Zen 8 drives for higher clocks as well than Zen 6. Who knows? Maybe we will see that at some point. This piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB. JLC PCB supports a wide range of PCB materials, including traditional FR4, aluminum, and copper core boards. But beyond these, JLC also specializes in flexible PCBs, offering enhanced versatility for modern electronics. But that's not all. In addition to classic yellow, black, and white PCB substrates, they now provide transparent PCBs that gives a sleek, futuristic design for electronics that want to ditch bulky enclosures and embrace a more transparent circuit board as their foundation. If you want to get any of these products and support Moore's Law is Dead, check out the link in the description to get easy, affordable, and reliable PCB manufacturing. And you can even get a $10 coupon for a Flex PCB right now. So support Moore's Law is Dead by supporting JLC PCB today. Florida Man writes in. He says, if AMD is paying so much money for N2X, how much more expensive should we expect Zen 6 to be for 12 cores? Well, it would be one chiplet instead of two. And the die size, I believe I leaked, was 75 millimeters square. So it's like basically the same die size that they've been doing for Zen 5. It's a very small one. I mean, it might cost less to make.
Unless TSMC decides to start charging a lot more per wafer, which I don't know if you know anything about that. But
well, there's always those rumors that they are with the newest nodes, and to a degree, I'm sure they are. For the nodes below 2 nanometer, I think they're getting a lot more reasonable, though. I guess I'll put it this way. I've leaked that Olympic Ridge Zen 6 on desktop could use either a 6 nanometer IO die design that might not even have integrated graphics anymore, or a 3 nanometer design that's almost like a mini Halo thing. Like it has the NPU, probably. It might have RDNA 4 graphics, like 2 or 4 compute units of that, which therefore might get you to, like, I don't know, decent integrated graphics, like 720p gaming or 1080p gaming in every single chip. You know, that sort of, like, hearing that one of them doesn't have integrated, though, makes me think it's both. One of them is for the budget chips. But yeah, let's put it this way then. The chips that use a 6 nanometer IO die, and who knows, maybe they would build it so it can only use one CCD to save even more money. As long as the IO die doesn't cost much more to make, going from 2 4 nanometer CCDs to 1 2 nanometer CCD, I don't think it costs any more. It might cost the same or less in reality, actually. So do I think they'll charge less than they are right now? No, I don't really think that. But one of my expectations for Zen 6 are price per core goes down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they do raise prices per tier. That's my expectation. So, like, if the 10, I don't know what they'll call it, the 10800X3D has 10 cores, you know, then I think they're still going to charge a flat 500 or 550 for that, because it's going to be a 7 gigahertz, possibly 240 megabyte L3 cache, just monster. They're going to charge, probably 20% more than they did for the 9800X3D. But it is going to have, you know, like 50%, if it's 10 cores, like 50% more multi-threading due to the higher clocks, the extra cores. In gaming, I mean, might be 50% higher. So they're going to be like, yeah, look, it costs 20% more, but it's 50% better. So, I mean, are you really going to complain? Some people will, but ultimately they are increasing price performance by like 30% gen over gen once more. So that's, again, I don't know. That's what they'll do. That's what I would tentatively expect them to do.
Yeah. Or the alternative would just be to pretend that's not what they're doing and just add more tiers at the top and be like, the 800 is pull an i9. I guess it wouldn't surprise me if they did it.
The thing that worries me about them potentially doing that is just recent rumors about Nova Lake, because again, I keep beating this horse, but I have to. Like, in gaming, Hardware Unboxed has found that the 9800X3D is like 37% faster than the top Arrow Lake chip that costs, I don't know if it costs more anymore. It probably doesn't, because Intel can't get anyone to buy their stuff at MSRP. But so if there's a 37% gulf for Intel to climb in gaming, okay, well, now assume the clocks are 20% higher or 25% higher, potentially, I would say. So that's 1.25 times 1.37. Then let's just assume it's 10% IPC, although I think it might be 12 or more. You know, then don't shoot the messenger. I'm doing the math in front of you guys. 25% higher clocks, 10% higher IPC. If you multiply that by 37% more performance, this is where AMD's ahead now. AMD is close to doubling the performance of Arrow Lake in gaming. Mm-hmm. So do I think Nova Lake's going to double performance in gaming gen over gen?
Maybe.
I hope so, but I don't think so. And so that would be my concern about why AMD might charge a lot more. Ultimately, the margins on these things are huge. Ultimately, because they can use less CCDs for some of their models now, They don't really need to cost that much more, but their competition's never been farther behind. And the next story we're about to get to talks about this, that they're admitting it. That is the number one thing that will raise prices on Ryzen, is not the extra cost of the node. It is the lack of competition.
Mm-hmm.
TWHPC Hamster writes in and says, "Hello again, Tom. I don't know if it's again. You messaged me before. What are you hearing? What are you hearing in terms of AMD using AVX-10 and APX on Zen 6 and 7? And what is the status of the pure 64-bit x86 64 whatever buzz that I've heard from a few years ago? Is it dead, chugging along in limbo? And when, if ever, will AMD start successfully leading the market of x86 64 extensions, unlike 3D now? Do you want or need to? Do they want or need to? Anyways, I don't know if this is the first time I've admitted this, but I'm going to be getting into Zen 7 a lot more over the next month, because I actually have quite a amount of information on that. I probably want to go through some more Zen 6 APU stuff first, because it's coming out actually within the next couple of years, and and because of that, it's also more detailed, so I think it's more interesting. But I'm not sure about the instructions for Zen 6. Just off the top of my head, I don't remember. But Zen 7, I do know, is adding a lot new extensions, like a lot more. Zen 7 is the new architecture. Zen 6 just kind of finishes any remaining weaknesses of Zen. Max clocks, lower latency with a bridge die. Zen 7 is going to add tons of new instructions and features in that way. All right. Let us now shift gears. I've already mentioned this, but it is time to get to it with story number 3. 18A process seems to be flailing as Intel CEO admits they are no longer a top 10 chip maker. Quoting first from Reuters, and then it just transitions into me quoting from an article from TechSpot. Intel's new chief executive is exploring a big change to its contract manufacturing business to win major customers. 2 people familiar with the matter told Reuters, and a potentially expensive shift from its predecessor's plans. The new strategy for Intel's foundry business would mean offering outside customers a newer generation of technology, the people said, a manufacturing process known as 18A, in which prior CEO Pat Gelsinger had invested heavily. Yeah, I wouldn't shut up about it. Was losing its appeal to new customers, said the sources, who spoke on condition of anonymity. To put aside external sales of 18A and its variant 18AP, manufacturing processes that have cost Intel billions of dollars to develop, the company would have to take a write-off. One of the people familiar with the matter said. Industry analysts contacted by Reuters said such a change could amount to a loss of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. The company is targeting high-volume production later this year for 18A with its internal chips, Panther Lake, and Nova Lake, I believe, too, which are, well, I don't know, at least Nova Lake. The company is targeting high volume production with its own chips, which are all expected to arrive ahead of external customer orders. Meanwhile, delivering 14A in time to win major contracts is by no means certain, and Intel could choose to stick with its existing plans for 18A, just to be clear, one of the sources said. Additionally, Lip-Bu Tan, who is Intel CEO, speaking to staff in a company-wide broadcast that was leaked to the Oregonian, he reflected on Intel's past dominance, but stated plainly that those days are over. 20, 30 years ago, we are really the leader, Tan told employees, but now I think the world has changed. Honestly, we're not even in the top 10 semiconductor companies. Tan attributed Intel's struggles to both internal shortcomings and the company's inability to keep pace with rivals in key technological arenas, particularly AI. He acknowledged that customers have been dissatisfied with Intel's performance and conceded that the company is too far behind to catch up with Nvidia in developing advanced AI training technology. In fact, he said that on training, I think it's too late for us, the CEO said. And that Nvidia's dominance in the sector is too strong to overcome. Despite the grim assessment, though, Tan insisted that Intel's turnaround is possible, though he cautioned that this is a marathon, not a sprint. The layoffs, he explained, are part of a broader effort to make Intel more agile and responsive, similar to its competitors such as Nvidia, Broadcom, and AMD. Tan called on employees to embrace humility moving forward and to focus on listening to customers and adapting to their needs. And there's another article here, but this already kind of touched on it, but they closed thousands of layoffs just happened as well at Intel yet again.
I think on the surface, this is a pretty bleak story, obviously, especially if they end up just axing 18A. That's bad, but I do also have to temper that with, like, I've said for a while now, I think the most optimistic thing from Intel is their CEO or their C-suite start coming out and having some degree of
True.
humility and not, talking like this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. So even though this is an internal, this is a leak from an internal meeting. I mean, a company-wide meeting. I'm assuming the CEO expects
I'll
to
admit
leak.
it. Some of my leaks came from this,
And I guess the CEO would expect some of that information to leak on a company-wide meeting. So this is more or less public with extra steps in my mind. I don't know. I think seeing the CEO acknowledge we're no longer a top tech company bodes possibly the most optimistic message Intel could send right now, which is we're not pretending we're something we're not anymore. If that made sense. I don't know if I said too many knots.
No,
in
it
there.
made sense.
Okay.
No, it's interesting that that's your take, though. I really don't have any inclination to push back on that. It's true. That is what me and you said a while ago. It's like the number one thing Intel can do to make us believe that they are going to become a newer and therefore more competitive company in any point in the future. Like anything we can point to would just be if they stopped talking like how Pat Gelsinger did, where he was like, AMD's in our rearview mirror. Oh, they're beating us by 100% in some apps, like, but somehow we're ahead.
AMD's in our rearview mirror. Oh no, we're driving the wrong way on the highway.
Or a lot of people make those jokes, actually. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, this is the number one thing that I got number one thing. Another thing I would just point out is that, and I said this in the Moore's Laws at Discord when I saw this news drop recently, is, wow, geez, this is looking a little bit like Intel 4. I remember when Intel announced Intel 4, which I believe is what Meteor Lake uses, and then there was the refined version of it in Intel 3 that they've used for almost nothing, I think, besides I think maybe, I guess that's still important though, right? Granite Rapids I think uses that. And it's like they expected all these customers to want to buy Intel 4 or Intel 3. They opened up that big fab in Ireland, and then nothing happened. And then they were like, well, it sounded a lot like this. They're like, we're winding down that early to get to 18A and 20 and then 18A as quickly as possible because we think that's going to be the winner. Now it sounds like they're saying that again, winding down 18A quickly to go to 14A. And so again, there's going to be people, and I can already think of who some of the fans of this community who are going to say you're portraying this in this negative way. Look at this one random Twitter leaker who says Panther Lake's doing great. But I would say to these people, show me the money man, because stop with the leaks a little bit here. Like, you can notice that me and you are apprehensive to leak a lot of stuff about Intel lately because we don't know how much of it's even going to come true. Intel is a company that you mostly have to look at what's actually happening. What's actually happening is this sounds exactly like what they said about Intel 4 and 3 and the floundering there. You can claim whatever you want, but that's what this sounds like to me.
Yeah, just honestly, like, as an example, like, I mean, Strix Halo has been out for around a year now, but you leaked that and we discussed it, 2 years before it even came out. And it was, for the most part, to my memory, like pretty much exactly what you discussed in that video you put out, obvious, or to the extent that it could be like, but Intel, you just can't expect something like that years in advance. And in my mind, any actual firm information from Intel that's more than, I don't know, 5 to 6 months out is almost completely uninteresting to me at this point, because I just don't know what's going to happen with it. You know what I mean? Like, they are really a company that seems to just on 6 months out, anything, all bets are off with them.
Right. And I want to actually use what you just said as a jumping off point to some criticism this channel has gotten before, or I've seen, I see occasionally, where they're just like, well, you only want to leak AMD stuff, or, why don't you put out exciting things about Intel? And it's like, well, number one, just as an example, this is in the write-up, but I'll bring it up now. The wrap-up, but I'll bring it up now. Diamond Rapids, I just saw the headlines, 192 cores confirmed. Who the fuck leaked that first? Me, in 2023. Mm-hmm. I believe it was in May or June. Over 2 full years ago, guys. I leak Intel stuff years before anyone else talks about it. I'm aware of what's going on at Intel. And so then when you say, well, why don't you leak these exciting things? Because Arrow Lake fell well short of what I was told it was going to be. And I don't want to be wrong. And Meteor Lake fell, well short of what I was told it was going to be. I don't want to be wrong. And so it's like, well, why don't you put out exciting Intel stuff? Why do you...
It's hard for there to be exciting Intel stuff.
Because when they keep falling short of what I'm told they were supposed to achieve, it's like, why are you excited, as an example, about Zen 6? Why don't you say exciting things about Nova Lake? And it's because I heard Nova Lake was supposed to be this strong here, and recently I've heard it's weaker, and every month I hear it's weaker than what I initially said. And Zen 6 sounds like it's getting better over time. Because AMD delivers what they say they'll deliver, what I'm told by my sources they'll deliver, and people at Intel are kind of not really sure what's going to pan out. And so I just want to say that, like this week, Diamond Rapids, me, I leaked 192 cores over 2 years ago before anyone else. Read them and weep, haters. I mean, this is the channel that gets you accurate leaks. I think I'm willing to brag here above almost anyone else, I believe, out there, especially when it comes to not just, guessing Nvidia super specs every now and then on Twitter, or only putting out like AMD Radeon leaks once every year. Like, this channel tries to be comprehensive with PlayStation, Xbox, Intel, AMD, and Nvidia, and I think our track record is the best. And we're not choosing to be more positive about AMD. AMD is more positive, and I can't be sure. I can't fake optimism towards something that deep down I'm worried is going to pull another Meteor Lake, which is basically everything Intel makes right now.
Yeah, and like I've said it a million times, once they actually execute successfully, like twice in a row, I'll have some level of enthusiasm for Intel again. But I think that's a pretty low bar. I don't know what else to say. I think that's a low bar.
But like you said, the fact that their current CEO is talking in this measured, reasonable way tells you they might get there. But the thing I would say about that is I think people need to, the cope has to stop. I'm not going to say I saw a big YouTuber put out something like Intel, your only hope. Dude, where are you? What planet are you on? The CEO just said they're going to be behind AMD and Nvidia for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, the reality is it's going to be probably half a decade to a decade before Intel can truly swing back as hard as we want them to. And telling gamers to get their hopes up on something that's only going to disappoint them is doing a disservice to your fans. Stop the cope. Short term, competing with AMD, Apple, and Nvidia. I don't believe those are very poor companies, by the way. So I think there's going to be competition for AMD. And with Intel, we just need to hope that they can balance the books and then start climbing out of the hole that, frankly, Pat dug them into.
Yeah, and I'm not going to bet that they will, but I mean, it can happen. Like, AMD was worth, what, $2 or something?
Yeah, I mean, the whole
years
AMD
ago
was in was crazy.
So, I mean, things can change, and I don't doubt that Intel, well, I shouldn't say don't doubt. I wouldn't bet that Intel won't come back, I guess is the way I'd put it.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean,
we're not betting against Intel. We just think you guys need to understand it might be a decade, not a year.
Yeah, and what sucks is, like, yeah, to some extent, it can almost sound like celebrating layoffs. It's layoffs suck, but the problem is...
I don't think we sound very happy right now.
The problem is Pat overcooked the company, so now... all right, there's too many people there for what they're offering. Why is this company so big compared to companies that are leaner and put out more successful and more innovative products more frequently? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. All right. Man, Nolis Ragkusas writes in and says, given the recent layoffs at Intel, do you think Lip-Bhutan is positioning the company for a potential breakup and sale of its divisions? Right, like leaning them down to make them easier to sell off. I don't know.
Yeah, the one thing I would be worried is if this is just going to end up being a hatchet
job.
Yeah, that's what I'd be scared of. Because that does suck if you're just selling the company for parts.
The one thing I will say is I think they need to sell off a part of their foundries. Not all of them. I mean, I keep seeing these reports, not just out of Intel, but out of Samsung foundries and TSMC, that they're canceling plans to expand foundries in the US. And I'm sure some of that is the tariff uncertainty, but undoubtedly a lot of it is I just think there's been too much buildup of foundries. I think there's this weird thing that happened 5 years ago or more, when maybe even a decade ago. Everyone's like, we need to build more foundries in the U.S., and then they did, and they realized, well, no one's going to use them. We actually didn't need this many. We didn't need $50 billion worth of goddamn foundries. We actually just need a few key ones in the U.S. so it's diversified. But for the most part, like, you can say you're doing it for the United States security, like building up the same in the complex that TSMC has. But what that's going to actually do, if you succeed in doing that, is everyone's still going to go to TSMC first. And you're going to have all of these foundries that no one needs, that you can say are there for national security, but they're not going to be there because they cost too much money to maintain until you need them. And so they're still going to just go out of business anyways. I mean, it'd be like, we're mad there's all of this manufacturing of electric cars in China, and, you know, of course, plenty of automobiles in other countries like Germany. And so because of that, we now need the US to have the same manufacturing capacity as China and Germany combined. Like, if you accomplish that, that's going to bankrupt everyone. And then, well, all of those will collapse and no one will maintain the facilities. And you want to make sure you can match them, maybe, or build or have some degree of competition. But simply trying to make the US have as much manufacturing as Taiwan is silly, because that's going to bankrupt the entire country. It just is. It is, you know. All right. But yeah, so I don't know, man. Nolus, Reg Kusis. All I can say is it's plausible, and I do still think they probably need to sell off parts of their divisions. The GPU one, I'm not sure, because you could say they need that for server, but I think they just canceled a bunch of server AI stuff. So I don't even know if they need that anymore. And there's a part of me where I'm like, why don't they just license Nvidia for their integrated graphics and sell off all of the ARC stuff that is really just wasting the money, and then they need to sell off other foundries. But yeah, anyways, I'm starting to repeat myself and ramble, so that is a cue to move on to the next story, which is story number 4. Gamers reject RTX 5060 Ti 8GB. Outsold is outsold 16-1 by a 16GB model. And then I also talk about 5060 reviews from Hardware Unboxed. So first, Tech Power Up. According to the only publicly available sales data from one of Germany's largest retailers, Mind Factory DE, we gain insight into the sales of NVIDIA's GeForce RTX 5060 Ti 16 and 8 gigabyte models. According to the sum of the units sold, the 16 gigabyte version of the 5060 Ti is outselling the 8 gigabyte version by more than 16 times, which would represent, well, yeah, a 1,600% difference. That is how math works.
That is a rephrasing of the same exact math.
Yes. Mind Factory lists each GeForce RTX 5060 Ti model with a tag indicator of the units sold. And so, yeah, so they added that up and then compared it. So number one, and that bears out in other articles I've seen from other sources and retailers as well. You can go to Amazon bestsellers. And unfortunately, the 5070 is starting to pick up in sales, like it always seems to eventually, despite having 12 gigabytes. But the 8 gigabyte models are kind of falling apart unless it's the absolute cheapest stuff. But anyways, I also want to move on to this testing that Hardware Unboxed did of, I believe Steve tested like the past 6 years, maybe was it 20, 60, 30, 60, 40, 60. So yeah, I think 6 years or like 4 generations of 60 class cards. It says, when Nvidia launched the RTX 5060, they made one thing clear. They don't want reviewers getting close to it. By holding back GPU drivers until after the product was already on shelves, the company effectively prevented any meaningful day one analysis. To make matters even more convenient for themselves, the release was timed to land during Computex. This is interesting, actually, when most of the tech press was busy scrambling outside of their homes between press briefings and prototype demos in Taipei. Honestly, it was a solid plan, but we weren't able to let that slide. So we packed up a test system, took our 5060 sample to Taiwan with us, and waited for the driver to drop. It came, we benchmarked, and thankfully we were successful. And so then for this comparison, we used the 2060 as our baseline for 60 class GPUs, which we believe is reasonable given its substantial leap over the 1060, despite still featuring just 6 gigabytes of RAM. The 2060 delivered on average a 53% performance improvement over the 1060 across a wide range of games. This context makes it then easy to see why people back in the day were disappointed with the 3060. It proved that having more VRAM alone doesn't guarantee a good product. In some scenarios, the 3060's 12 gigabytes of VRAM still let it outperform newer cards, to be fair. But, you know, skipping ahead here, the 3060 was like 10-20% faster. I didn't even think 20. I remember that, than the 2060. And mobile, I'm just editorializing here. The 3060 still had 6 gigabytes. It was like basically not preferable at all to a 2060 laptop. And then it basically continues from there. The 4060, I believe, was 20% faster. but lost RAM. And the 5060, going back to hardware unbox here, offers around a 20% improvement in value compared to the 4060, which I guess is a solid gain after 2 years. So yeah, actual performance gains vary from modest to excellent depending on the game, but on average you're getting 20% more for the same price. For us though, the GeForce 5060 is frustrating because it could have been great had it launched with 12 gigabytes of RAM like the B580. It'd be far easier to recommend with attaching paragraphs of disclaimers at the end of every review. But here's where we are. 6 years after the 2060, we are really still waiting for a new 60 class GPU that does it all by offering a strong performance uplift at the right price with enough VRAM. For now, what we are seeing after 6 years is a around 50% uplift, the same uplift that we saw from the 2060 to the 1060 to the 2060 in a single generation. And by the way, I'll add, remember, Turing wasn't even a cheap generation. But seeing how the GPU market is shaped in recent years, will we ever see such a product again? I don't know. Things don't look good. And I think this is important. Sorry, I got a little muddled in the read up there, reading it, people. But the point is, Steve kind of showed that, like, I know that the 5060 is the same price as the 4060 and like at least 20% faster. And, they haven't raised prices on the 60 class for a couple gens now. We'll bringing more performance, but in what is that then? 1, 2, like 3 or 4 generations, we got the same uplift we used to get in a single. Mm-hmm. And that's just where the 60 class is. And that's why I think it should be called the 50 class, and Nvidia should stop kidding itself.
Yeah, there's definitely been a slow degradation of like what it means to be 60 or 50 class. Or, I mean, hell, I think based on how trends are going, I think you'll be saying this. We'll be saying the same thing about the 70 class of GPUs pretty soon. Yeah, the 60 class is. I guess you can't say it's stagnating, but it's slowing at the rate of advancement. Like, you really haven't seen almost any versus the 3060, you've seen a decrease in the amount of RAM you get with it even, and the performance you get has slowed to the point where I would say the 5050 should definitely be called. I mean, the 5060 should definitely be called a 5050 at this point, and it's, I guess, been a slow march to that point, but. Yeah, we're fully there now. The 5060 is a 5050 or what should be a 5050.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, again, it was a little muddled, but like the reason I combined those two stories is it's just really so sad that what we used to get in a single gen, we've now gotten over half a decade's amount of time. Yeah. It's pathetic. Like what was actually funny too in his testing was seeing the 2060 sometimes not do as much worse in high VRAM scenarios as you think, because it is the last time, I believe. Yeah. Well, I guess it's not the 3060 was the last time they had a 192-bit bus. And so like you can still see like the 6 gigabyte with 192-bit 2060 not really suffer when it ran out of VRAM any more than an 8 gigabyte 4060. It's a complete mess, but the good news is that gamers are rejecting it. That's the narrative I wanted to spin by making this a story. Is recent testing, recent data, the 60 series has never looked more pathetic. At the same time, gamers are responding. They aren't buying these 8 gigabyte models, and so I think this really could cause change, and maybe we will next gen see a return to form. Like, look, the 6060 needs 16 gigabytes, not even 12. It needs 16 at this point.
No, I mean, if they want people to be enthusiastic about the 6060, which I think that is an if question at this point. Like, I don't know if it's certain. Yeah, it needs to have 16 gigabytes or at least 12 gigabytes, because I don't know, maybe Nvidia doesn't, I don't know if Nvidia doesn't care, or if Nvidia is surprised by the complete drop through the floor in enthusiasm for these lower end cards, because it really does seem like 60 class GPUs just no one gives a shit about anymore because of the amount of RAM they're giving you.
Yeah, what I will say is, look, the night is still young. All the time we see things happen where at first an Nvidia card launches and eventually it picks up in sales. Not always. Like the 4080 was always a dud, relatively speaking, but the 4070, especially Super, did pick up in sales eventually, despite basically being a flop for the first couple months it was out. But that is to say, that's why the 5060 is 8 gigabytes. It's eventually the 4060 8 gigabytes sold very well. And it kind of was the better choice than the 7600, I would argue, a lot of the time. So I can see why it did. But if it doesn't pick up in sales, that is when Nvidia will respond. And what I will say, just to remind everybody right now, I just pulled up Amazon best sellers. Number one, 3060 12 gigabyte for like 280. And then after that is a 9060 XT 16 gigabyte. And then another 9060 XT 16 gigabyte. And then there's that 5070. And then a 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte, 7600 XT 16 gigabyte, 9070 XT 16 gigabyte. And then finally, number 10 is a budget 3050 6 gigabyte that, there's always people buying the cheapest thing, even if it's stupid. This to me is the message that needs to be sent. Almost nothing but 16 gigabyte cards at the top of the stack, like half of them being AMD or much more than usual. Again, I know Nvidia's the top selling card with the 3060 and then the fourth best selling card with the 5070, but AMD is usually much lower in market share. So AMD selling half of the top cards, and do it yourself is huge for them. And this will hopefully, if this continues, send the right message and hopefully change how things are done in the low end.
Yeah, I think it at a minimum sends the message that people want at least 12 gigabytes now. I guess we'll see what message Nvidia takes from that.
Yeah. Yes, we will. This episode of Broken Silicon is brought to you by Micro Center, who is a fantastic long-term sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead for really more reasons than I could ever have enough time to state. But of course, they have unbeatable prices, unbeatable deals where they're giving away 32 gigabytes of RAM with many of the best processors on the market right now. And then there's other promos usually on top of that. So really, I cannot recommend Micro Center enough. And now there's never been a better time. It's that summer period where sales start going down, so prices start going down. And they're actually having a 4th of July savings event right now if you check the link in the description. So I do think this is a fantastic time to build a new PC and maybe get a new laptop or monitor and check out what other deals they have going on, which they want me to remind you that they will be updating their July 4th deals as the month continues. So make sure to bookmark this podcast and check these links multiple times every now and then if you're interested in new tech, because the deals will continually update. And then, of course, they also have a new location in Santa Clara, which you will want to check out if you are in that area. They also have special purchasing options through Affirm, and well, they also have Micro Center News. There's a link to that in the description as well that you can go to, of course, and always find out the newest tech news and how to get the best deals on it at Micro Center. So once again, as I always say at the end of these, let me go. Thank you for sponsoring us, Micro Center. I do love having this sponsor for so long now because I really do think it is a great aid to the community. And otherwise, yeah, check them out to support Moore's Law is Dead. Let's get back to the show. Techno writes in and says, what would you suggest to AMD for a 50-50 competitor? My personal suggestion would be in the short term to produce more 7600s and 7600 XTs. Maybe, but it needs to be XTs. AMD needs to get the 7600 XT at this point probably below $300, and then maybe that could outsell the 5060. Because look, it's going to be like 30% weaker, but if it has double the RAM and is cheaper, a lot of people might choose it. Long term, though, I think they need low-end RDNA 5 as soon as possible. I mean, look, I think they can counter a lot of this right now if they just launch a 9068 gigabyte for like $200. And right now the 5060 isn't selling great, so maybe they don't need to counter anything. Again, maybe a $250 7600 XT 16 gigabyte is all they need to do. But ultimately, I think eventually they do need an ultra budget RDNA 4 card because RDNA 4 is just awesome. I mean, I'm using one right now. It's just better. It is the best AMD architecture since RDNA 2.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we see something below the 9060 come out for RDNA 4, but as it stands, I think the 7600 XT has the potential at least to work as their low-end card.
Yeah. But again, eventually, I think they just need barely cut down 8 gigabytes for $200 or less. Or honestly, AMD, cancel, or don't cancel, but like, don't produce a lot of these 8 gigabyte 9060 XT models. We've seen similar stuff with the 9060 XT 8 gigabyte, by the way, just not selling compared to the 16 gigabyte. And just make a 9060 16 gigabyte and 8 gigabyte for like 200, like 180, 250 respectively, if the margins are there to do it. Because, I having used RDNA 4 for a while now, and I'm actually let me do the fun little Oops, did the wrong one. There's a Strix Halo laptop right there. I will say RDNA 3.5, clearly better than RDNA 3. It is not as good as RDNA 4, though. I mean, it's just raw performance I'm talking about here, but it handles ray tracing spectacularly better than RDNA 2 did and RDNA 3. But you can tell in Metro Exodus in my early testing of Strix Halo that it's like, that RDNA 4 just doesn't, RDNA 4 doesn't really care about ray tracing anymore. They're up there with Nvidia. It's like, I'm sure if you benchmark it, Nvidia's 10, 20% better in this aligned whatever, but you don't really notice it with RDNA 4. I do think AMD just needs to flip to RDNA 4 or better as quickly as possible over making 3. a ton of 3.5 or 3 products, unless they can make the 7600 XT 16 gigabyte 200. But I don't really think they can. General writes in again, he says, do we think Nvidia will do a refresh for laptop like Turing or skip it like they did with Lovelace? If so, what specs do you think it'll be? I think they're going to skip it. I mean, they have no competition right now. Unless AMD launches a Navi 48, X mega chip, the 9090M or something. Then I think they would have to respond, but that's the only way.
Sure.
Otherwise, I don't really see them doing it. I mean, they dominate laptop GPU.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where laptop GPUs, I think, are very boring at this point, where it kind of doesn't even feel like they're trying anymore.
No, they're not trying. They know, Nvidia knows that they are in the lead, and they know that they don't really have to worry about anything right now. So my inclination would be they're going to skip a super launch for laptop again, unless there is some 9090M AMD launches. Then they might have to respond, because the 5090 laptop at first seemed interesting, but over time seemed like quite a piece of crap, frankly. I mean, it sucks, for what they're calling it. The 24 gigabytes upgrade from 16 isn't enough to make you go, this seems like it's like 5% better than its predecessor. TWHPC Hamster writes and says, hey, Tom, any news on the 9090 XT's compute performance? Specifically, I'd like to ask how likely, from what you've been hearing, would it be for the headline FE32 performance, not double pumped, to be over 92 teraflops? Also, was CDNA 4 based on, I'm going to skip some of this other stuff here about like codename leaks and stuff. Look, here's the compute. Take 3.7 divided by 2.9. Multiply that by whatever the teraflops are for the 9070 XT. It's just a higher binned or node shrunk version of the same thing with GDDR7. That's all it is. And so I don't know what teraflops it is, as I don't pay that much attention to teraflops anymore ever since Lovelace went to the stratosphere, and it didn't really seem to matter anymore what teraflops were when it comes to gaming performance. I mean, look at the comparisons of the consoles this Gen 2. Like which one won? Not the one with the most teraflops. And I do mean in performance. So I don't know, but if that's what you're interested in, I believe Navi 48X, if it comes out, is literally just higher clocked with GDDR7 of what we already have. AI generated fish writes in and says, Tom, you've used the term Zen moment repeatedly, and I get where you're going for with that. However, to me, the more impactful moment would be a Zen 3 moment for Radeon, where there is both a consumer acknowledgement, finally, that the product is good and ample supplies there to meet demand in both laptop and desktop. When, if ever, do you see Radeon getting to this point? Well, so I think this is interesting, because I think it might, I don't know that RDNA 4 is necessarily a Zen 1 moment, but I could see RDNA 5 or UDNA being, when they go to especially if it's UDNA, it's like, whoa, they've really matched or beat Nvidia on a lot of things. You can buy it. It's reasonably priced. AMD's back, baby. I think that could happen. Zen 3 was an interesting moment because, look, let's be honest, Zen Plus was like 90% the performance of Coffee Lake for a half the price, a third the price. I would argue you were silly to get Coffee Lake back then, unless you were an esports gamer, I guess. And then Zen 2 was just better. I mean, look, it's just better than Intel, except for edge cases where Intel might win in gaming by 5%, although in some games Zen 2 won. Zen 3 was when no one argued anymore. They're like, look, AMD's better. They're just better in every way. We acknowledge they are. When is Radeon going to get to that?
I wouldn't bet that they are at this point. So
I mean, that sounds crazy to say, but
that doesn't mean that they won't be competitive against Nvidia. But Zen 3 was a pretty big moment for AMD.
Yeah. So you're asking me when will AMD catch up? Not when AMD start taking market share. When will AMD start taking rapid amounts of market share from GeForce in a way where everyone just openly acknowledges they're better? Again, this is the same thing I said about Intel. Temper your expectations here. Radeon has a long ways to go to do that. I don't think that would happen until at least RDNA 6/UDNA 2, is my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they're not competing against a completely stagnant competitor like they were with Intel. Or not completely, I guess, but relatively speaking.
Now, you do see some evidence, like we've just discussed, of stagnation in gaming with GeForce.
True.
So I could see it happening. It's not. I mean, we're
not there yet.
We're not. It's too early for us. It would be like if in 2016, me and you were talking about, I mean, what would even be the comparison? Like, because I guess AMD had never really beaten Intel or anyone at that point. Like it'd be like if you were asking, hey, when will AMD be like Nvidia to Intel? If you were asking me that in 2016 or something, or maybe 2017, I would be like, I don't know when. But then lo and behold, a decade later almost, and now we can talk that way. So ask me in 3 years, all right, let us now move on to story number 5. Xbox implodes. Phil might be canned, backwards compatibility is in jeopardy, and studios are gutted. Quoting first from IGN, one of the original founding members of Xbox, Laura Fryer, believes the firm's hardware ambitions are, as she put it in quotes here, dead. In a new video in which Fryer reflects upon her time shipping the original Xbox and the 360, she calls the company's current roadmap chaos and asks, when asked, is the new flashy ROG Ally the real deal, and ponders what the future may hold for Xbox going forward. She said, there is literally no reason to buy that handheld. Fryer opined of it. Obviously, continuing her quotes here, as one of the founding members of the Xbox team, I'm not pleased with things are today. I don't love watching all of the value that I helped create slowly get eroded away. And I'm sad because from my perspective, it looks like Xbox has no desire, or I don't know, maybe just can't ship hardware anymore. So this partnership is about a slow exit from the hardware business completely. Personally, I think Xbox hardware is dead. There you go, a founding Xbox member, quoted, not a fanboy. And then, of course, in the last Broken Silicon with Colin of Sacred Symbols, I leaked that there seems to be no plans for true backwards compatibility for the new Xbox handheld. I've seen a lot of misreporting on this, by the way, as a side note. I did not say there could not be a next-gen Xbox that has backwards compatibility hardware-wise, or I guess it's still technically software, isn't it, to Series X. I said the handheld clearly will not, and that is a bad sign that they will put a lot of focus into that moving forward. So you have me saying that, which is to say I leaked in that Colin, Broken Silicon, that I have devs saying they would sue if Microsoft did it on the handheld, and that behind the scenes, Microsoft reps are just saying the next Xboxes are just a PC. Don't worry about compatibility anymore. Worry about your PC build. And then you have a founder of Xbox saying that she thinks the hardware is dead. So there's that. And then another bucket here, quoting from WCCF Tech, the latest in today's whirlwind of Microsoft and Xbox related news is a rumor that Phil Spencer, the current chief executive officer of Microsoft's gaming division, will retire following the launch of Xbox's next gen console. Doesn't clarify what that means. Sarah Bond, who is currently the head of Xbox at Microsoft, is rumored to take his place. This claim comes from the Ghost of Hope on X, an account that has previously been accurate regarding Call of Duty news. It's also been slightly corroborated by Insider Gaming, who I believe is very accurate, who claims that Spencer's retirement in the near future is something that they have heard multiple times this year. That said, Phil Spencer is currently 57 years old as well. He worked at Microsoft in one form or another since 1988 and joined the Xbox team in 2001. So for those reasons alone, it would not be that crazy if by now he was thinking of retiring people. Now, look, Microsoft denies these claims, but whatever, Microsoft. You've denied a lot of things. You've denied things were bad and then gutted and closed studios a month after saying everything's fine. So Microsoft would say this no matter what, and they lie all the time. I'm just going to be that blunt about it. Multiple studios have closed that they said are doing well, then they just close them months later. So I'm going to put nothing into Microsoft's opinion on the matter. All right, Dan.
I mean, yeah.
What do we think?
Phil Spencer has obviously lost some favorability at Microsoft, like as he's been put on the back burner. I think what's Sarah Bond, she's
Yeah.
been more public recently. So I don't know. I do think you can just read the tea leaves to some extent and see that they're grooming Sarah Bond to take over in Phil Spencer's role in the next
I
few
think it's
years,
obvious.
regardless. Yeah. And they're
Yeah, you
probably
don't need any sources to see that. She's now doing all the presentations to preparing her for it, clearly.
yeah, and I think they're probably going to try to do that in a somewhat face-saving way rather than just canning him because he's been there for a long time, and what's the point in? I don't know if there's really a purpose in like firing him or do the executive version of firing him, but which is just hey man, retire now. But I don't know. I think that's pretty clear that Sarah Bond is going to take over for him in the next couple years. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, Microsoft is in a huge amount of jeopardy, and I mean, we talked about this on the last Die Shrink. I think it's
we did a whole Xbox like
right.
retrospective about how they got to where they're at and where they're likely to go.
I
whole hour bonus video if you want to support us on Patreon to get that.
Yeah, I think we're very quickly hurtling towards a situation where some people that are in one of Microsoft's ecosystem are about to get burned, and it's probably going to be Xbox, as Xbox fans seem to be dwindling these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I don't think it needs to be as chaotic as this withdrawal from, the country of Xbox is looking like here. I will say that I don't think it's even if they have to retreat, I don't think they have to screw over their fans. It just seems like they don't care if they do.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like you said, they've done it before.
Yeah. So I don't know what much else to say about this. I put out a short about this. It's actually doing pretty well, so I'd recommend it to people if you want like a condensed version of what I leaked in the last Broken Silicon with Colin from Sacred Symbols. But long story short, we both agree. If you want to play games on a next-gen Xbox, you should probably buy them on Steam right now, is my opinion, because that seems to be the direction these things are going. Backed up by my sources, backed up by Colin's analysis and his sources, backed up by a founder of Xbox, and basically all leakers. I know we're going to get comments where they're like, you're hating, Xbox denied this. Everyone but the biggest fanboys are saying this is what's happening right now, guys. Like, it would be weird. Like, it's not just me.
Yeah.
I'm just someone who's trying to bring like a little bit of proof to it too. The Forbidden Juice writes, and it says, hello, Tom and Dan. As a former Xbox fanboy, I think your points as to what's happening to Xbox in the recent Die Shrink are pretty on point. I had a 360 back when I was in middle school, and in hindsight, I was a fanboy. I almost certainly got the Xbox One after it with this mentality, and looking back on it, I remember huffing the copium a bit. I'm thinking it was still a good console despite its issues at launch. Now I see the brand as nothing more than a reminder of what once was a good console and brand. I'm firmly a PC gamer now, and the idea of an emulator that works on PC could even allow my 360 discs to play is the only thing that would even make me consider getting something Xbox related now. See, that's the thing too, is I don't know how you do this. There's massive publisher legal issues, so I don't know if it is possible from what I've heard, but some way of migrating your Xbox library to PC to bring, there are still tens of millions of Xbox gamers from the console to Windows gaming, should be a priority. It just doesn't sound like it really is behind the scenes. I know everyone's I saw the community notes on Twitter said that me and Colin's podcast had issues, by the way, because the community notes on Twitter are known for exceptional, unbiased and accurate reporting right now. Right. But neither here nor there. And it's like, they were just based on like Lisa Sue said, they'll have compatibility with Xbox hardware or something. And it's like, that could mean anything. Like, that means literally nothing. She didn't confirm anything directly. And again, I never said there couldn't be a backwards compatible console in the future. I'm just telling you the handheld sure as shit isn't, at least right now. That's not the plan. And that would tell me you should worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't think Xbox has to screw over their fans. I think that they should be trying to find a way to make people like the Forbidden Juice happy. They should be. I don't know that they care.
Yeah, they have a habit of not trying to make former subscribers to their defunct services whole. So,
it reminds me of Succession, there's this big moment in the last season where I'm not spoiling too much here, where I say the father basically argues that the kids are not serious people, and actually a fairly loving way, I would say, says you guys need to stop playing hardball with these executives because you're not a serious person.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be a serious person, you're not. That is what I would say of the Xbox execs right now. Not the person quoted who founded it, who clearly cared about gaming that we quoted. Sarah Bond, all of these people, these are not serious people when it comes to gaming. Yeah. So that is why they are screwing over their fans. It's not maliciousness. They are just not serious people. Or another way to put it, they have no pizza experience. Dark Helmet writes in, if you were to take over as head of Microsoft Gaming, what would you do with Game Pass? I would discontinue it and give current subscribers a credit towards purchasing games outright based on how long they were subscribed. I don't know. I don't see them killing Game Pass short term. They kind of have to try to make it work. I just don't know if they can or how they will. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on his side where I think they should kill Game Pass because... I don't know. I think for it to be profitable, you either have to increase prices or make it a husk of the service they want it to be. So either or.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is just more games on it. And frankly, like the promise that you get Call of Duty every year and maybe like half of the DLC to it. So that's why you keep resubscribing every month. But they can't afford to do that. They'd make more money doing it the other way. So I don't know what they can do. Yeah, I mean, killing Game Pass and then giving you a credit towards games, I guess that's an option. I just don't see them doing that. Again, this is the company, and I covered this in the podcast with Colin as well, that just robbed me of my copy of Age of Empires 3. They killed Games for Windows Live Store, said they were going to let you still download your games. You couldn't, and then just gave the double birds to everybody. Middle fingers all around. You have to rebuy it on Steam. They've done this before, so I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
The Forbidden Juice writes in again and says, hello, Tom and Dan. I'm halfway through listening to the recent BS with Colin. I just had a funny thought that I think would be quite the shot across the bow, if you will, to Microsoft. What if Valve came along and said, hey, abandoned Xbox fans, we'll give you a Steam key for any past game you had on Xbox that's in the Steam store. I'm not sure this would garner enough goodwill or be worth it to them to get people off Windows and onto Steam. But I'm not even sure if this is possible, but I don't know, a fun thought. It is a fun thought. I think that would cost them way too much and be a nightmare to prove which games you own. But I could see something. Like, they should do something.
I could see some credit for like a Microsoft-owned or Microsoft Studio game credit.
Microsoft probably wouldn't allow them to do that. I'm sure there's some legal agreement where Microsoft has a say over what you charge for their games, and they're not going to let you do that promotion.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that there should be something they try. It would behoove them to do something. I don't know what it would be, but like, yeah, because like I got BioShock remastered for free because I owned it on GameFly. They said GameFly honored my keys better than Microsoft did from their own fucking store. So that's who we're dealing with. GameFly. I mean, what the? By the way, they had me like hold up a picture that I owned it on a GameFly account or something to prove I'm not lying. And then they're like, all right, here's your Steam key. That's really funny. Like, so I don't know. Maybe there's something you can do where you can have a select handful of games that are classics. Maybe they could be games like BioShock. Like, because they're not Microsoft owned games. That Microsoft wouldn't let you do it. But like, what if Steam said, hey, do you own... do we have a system of proving that you own, like maybe even putting a disc into your PC and they scan it? If you own Microsoft, BioShock, Mass Effect, maybe a couple other things, although Microsoft might be mad at EA because EA partners with them with Game Pass, I think. But like there might be a handful of games you could do that were like big 360 titles as a promotion to, it's just a marketing event. So I could see something like that. But anything more, I don't know how the hell you would afford that. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're not going to give you 100 Xbox games for free, guys. I don't think so. This piece of content is brought to you by the fans that support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And it does need supporting. From personal attacks from tech elites that get mad when we tell you that they are lying to gamers and their own shareholders, to legal attacks from mega corporations that cost the team time and money. This is expensive and often very stressful work. And it's work that doesn't depend on access journalism, nor depend on NDAs or agreements that would sanitize our opinions and hold us back. No, nothing holds us back, and we are independently funded, and we use said funding to do things like pay professional renderers to show you products before they come out so that the sources that provided us the original pictures don't get in trouble. Or we also create bonus content like Die Shrinks, where you have videos and interviews coming out multiple times a month exclusively to reward our patrons with the extra content that we know they would like to see, whether it's inside scoops or more in-depth conversation and stuff that we just know wouldn't profit if we put it out publicly, but it doesn't need to profit for our fans on Patreon because it is self-funded. And so if you want any of that bonus content, or you want to support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead, or honestly, if you just want to support me, Dan, Gerard, Carbon Cry, or Jesse and Maurice so that we have food on the table every day, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And to those that already support us there, I'll see you on the Discord. Hayabu writes in, I might be making this memory up, but Colin's proposal for Sony to just do the manual work of porting the top game versus making some universal emulator isn't exactly without precedent either. It's on a much smaller scale, but back when 343 Industries was making Halo Master Chief Collection to garner some goodwill as a newer studio behind Halo, I remember they engaged with players in forums with a pick your top maps voting feedback series over months. Let players choose what maps got the full remaster treatment versus which was a quick upscale and copy. It was fun and memorable. I still remember it all these years later. Actually, I have something. This isn't nearly the same thing, but I remember Killzone Shadowfall. They had some like direct feedback thing for Guerrilla. They had like a point system too, where like people who contributed more got more points, so we're more likely to be able to be seen. Like you couldn't just make submissions in this like kind of closed door forum. It was really weird. Like only true fans could. And I suggested bring back the weapons from Killzone 2. That got upvoted to the top. My submission worked, like, and then they brought it in. So yeah, like stuff like this does happen. Although this is not the exact same thing. But anyways, he says it was fun and memorable. It might be too late now, but what do you think? Should Sony just do a gamers voting series for 20 to 30 games and announce the destruction of the PS3 farm afterwards? Maybe they could televise it. Yeah, I think that's a funny idea, but I think I just want to bring this up to you. I think I brought up actually offline, but Colin had a very good point that like at this point with the PS3 backwards compatibility debacle, which let me say once again, it is ridiculous that Sony hasn't figured out PS3 backwards compatibility at this point. I heard they had some version of the emulator working on PS4, but it was not good enough, and obviously the PS4 wasn't strong enough. With that in mind, I find it bizarre they haven't finished it yet. But Colin on the last episode pointed out, at this point, with how many remasters they've done and how many remasters third parties have done, isn't it easier to just port 10 more games? I mean, what's really left, like on Vita? An Uncharted, a Killzone, and like 5 other games.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I somewhat agree that they should just port another 20 games and call it a day. It sucks to say that, but that's probably easier by now.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather not see so many good games isolated on dead hardware. So, do something. And yeah, at a certain point, just bringing your few remaining games over, sure, might make more sense than try to crack this seemingly impossible code of emulating for some reason that Sony can't figure out. Yeah.
So again, there's another option here. Maybe they have it mostly working, but they need, 7 gigahertz clocks of Zen 6 in the PS6 for it to work perfectly. And, that's when they announce it, like play anywhere, play all your old games. Finally, we solved it for the PlayStation 6. I do think that's conceivable what they're going to do to also distinguish the PS6 from the previous generations. But if that is not the case, just port Resistance, Killzone, like what? Siren Blood Curse. Like we're not even in the we're out of the top 10 of games left when we get to Siren Blood Curse, which is a deep cut for anybody. Like it's yeah. Anyways, moving on to more fun Sony news though than complaining about their stupidity with backwards compatibility with story number 6. PS6, PSSR2, and RDNA 5 mentioned by PlayStation's Mark Cerny in recent interviews. Quoting here from Tom's Guide. Specifically, PS5 lead architect Mark Cerny has said the company is working on implementing an advanced graphics upscaling algorithm for PS5 Pro that should deliver better performance than its existing PSSR upscaling tech. According to a conversation I recently had, this is the writer, the new tech is a drop-in replacement for the current PSSR that should be straightforward for developers to quickly patch in when it arrives on the PS5 Pro consoles in 2026. Quoting Mark Cerny, this is not for proprietary technology. This is really trying to move the industry forward. Obviously, we want to use these technologies on our consoles, but these technologies are available to any of AMD's customers freely. According to Cerny and AMD's Hune, the two companies are collaborating even more closely than they did when designing the PS5 and PS5 Pro. Wow. The teams across Asia, Europe, and North America meeting regularly to share findings. This was something I reported on a lot, by the way, before the PS5 launch, that like it almost felt like Sony worked at AMD. Like they had badges. They would go into AMD locations or vice versa, have lunch breaks together. Whereas Microsoft was very much this like, I don't know, the bad guy in V for Vendetta on a giant screen, yelling at AMD for more teraflops the whole time. That's what basically AMD employees portrayed it, at least. But continuing, but yeah, so that's interesting. They've been doing this. They really are like their engineering teams are kind of like almost merging as becoming coworkers. Perhaps unsurprisingly, they claim both companies are learning something valuable from each other that has helped accelerate progress. As an example, Cerny mentioned that Sony helped AMD researchers integrate more demanding, graphically complex scenes into their research because Sony has seen firsthand how developers try to cram as much detail as possible into every scene. Hune said, and I quote, "Mark makes us a better company. We push each other." Jeez, these guys might want to get married. AMD, on the other hand, pushed Sony to set up a dedicated quality assurance team specifically focused on vetting whether each new iteration of an upscaling algorithm was actually even better than what came before it. The algorithm they came up with, Cerny said, could be implemented on current gen hardware, so the co-developed algorithm has already been released by AMD as part of FSR4 on PC, and we're in the process of implementing FSR4 on PS5, and it will release next year on PS5 Pro. It's not a cut-down version of the algorithm either. I want to be clear. This is the full fat version of FSR4 that we co-developed that will release for the PS5 Pro. So when AMD ships its next wave of graphics, they will have been designed with input from Mark Cerny and Sony engineers. Final quote from Mark Cerny here: "Big chunks of RDNA 5 or whatever AMD ends up calling it are coming out of engineering I'm doing on the project. And again, this is coming out of trying to move things forward. There are no restrictions on the way any of it can be used. Big chunks of RDNA 5. Let me see. There are no, sorry, I just accidentally double quoted that. So yeah, there you go. So I think this was really interesting. This was a lot here. I mean, there really are. There's a PSSR2 coming. In addition to that, full FSR4, he's committed to that coming to PS5 Pro. Kind of sounded like he eventually wants to get that working in some form on PS5 non-Pro. Again, this would go with what I've heard recently, that me and you covered, that it seems like hackers got FSR4 to work a little bit on RDNA 2, maybe a weaker version. And by weaker, I'd mean similar quality, but lower performance boost version will come to the base PS5 as well. On top of all of that, Radeon and Sony engineers, so it seems like they're the same company now, with AMD openly saying that Sony is influencing the design of the next line of graphics cards. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear that since the PS4 days, the Sony and AMD have been getting closer and closer with their hardware development teams to the point where, like, yeah, it really does seem like the two are inextricably linked at this point, at least from Sony's point of view. But it does seem like there is a give and take for both of them.
Yeah. So again, I'm not really sure what to add onto this one. I think this is only good things for PlayStation and for AMD. And in fact, I've always wondered because, I'm sure it's all the marketing side of it. Like behind the scenes, I'm just telling you guys, AMD engineers like working with Sony more. And I think it is because they're nicer and more collaborative. with them. They see themselves as on the same team, not as like a landowner dictating to his serfs to make a new Xbox. And if anything goes wrong, it's AMD's fault, not Microsoft's. That's again how they portrayed it to me. But like you still see AMD come out and like Lisa Su do, at least from what I could tell, very half-hearted, phoned-in video for YouTube, like we're powering the next Xbox handheld, yada 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 yada. It's just interesting because I just hear these engineers say that they like working with Sony more, they prefer it. There's all this enthusiasm. You can see that it really comes out in this interview with like Hune and Cerny. And yet they pay so much lip service to Xbox, which is becoming basically none of AMD's revenue in their earnings reports. And is it just like to not make them feel left out, or because they're just, we have to act like they're on the same level because we don't want them to be mean to us in Windows, and we really want Medusa Halo to do well.
Yeah, I mean, they're still have to be a big partner with Microsoft regardless, because so much of their hardware operates in a Microsoft ecosystem.
Yeah. So it's just interesting because, I'm like, when you look at Xbox sales, like Xbox must be almost none of like their gaming revenue in that part of AMD's earnings every quarter by now. And yet, why are they putting out multiple AMD Microsoft videos for a product that's not going to sell a fraction of their next PlayStation thing? And PlayStation's helping them build RDNA 5. Like what? It's just like, I guess it's because they feel like they have to. And maybe because they knew this sort of interview was going to come out and they had to like throw out a 1-minute video from Lisa Su so Microsoft wasn't sad. I don't know. It's interesting watching how this is evolving. All right. Let us now move on to the wrap up. These are, of course, the stories that we did not think deserved a full conversation, but at least deserve a mention. Oh yeah, not much to dwell on this one here. But Tech Epiphany put out on Twitter that the market share, it's not just the amount of CPUs sold, but the motherboard market share of various platforms. Number one was AM5, 24,000, AM4, 400. I'm rounding up everybody, just, LGA 1700, like 200, and then 1851, 30. I mean, I'm not going to do the math here right away, but it's like 10% of the market share. It looks like, 10%, 1%. Oh my God, so that is, good Lord.
I guess it's not a huge loss that they're not going to be on it for very long.
No, but I just think that needs to be pointed out in terms of revenue. Oh my God, is that correct? In terms of revenue share, and again, this is just Mind Factory. It says Intel's 5% of the revenue, and Intel's almost 7% of the units sold. I don't know. I will say it's sad that they're going to go to it's insulting that they're going to go to a new motherboard platform with Nova Lake, having like basically one generation on 1851. But it seems like 1% of you bought Arrow Lake. Yeah. So I don't know how much that actually matters to most people. Everyone's still buying 1700 or less than half as many 1700 as AM4. And wow, that's just put things in perspective, people. When we talk about like what Lipouton's talking about with the hole they have to climb out of, 1% Arrow Lake. Anyways, on a different note on Intel, Nova Lake has supposedly just tapped out on TSMC 2 nanometer. Okay. That puts it on track to launch in time for Zen 6, I would say for sure. We've already talked about it. Diamond Rapids specs confirmed. This was leaked by the channel over 2 years ago, but there you go. I didn't even realize this wasn't official yet. And I find this funny because this is one of those circumstances where I've already been talking about this, for months now, because I've leaked like Medusa Halo stuff that's going to use LPDDR6. I didn't even know that it wasn't even officially announced yet. But now LPDDR6 is announced. I looked at when that would be announced versus when new products come out. And I do think it is worth noting that I think probably Medusa Point uses LPDDR5 and DDR5X. Could be wrong. I think, actually, you know what? Okay. Yep. I'll have, we can make this pop up here and Gerard can shorten me Google it or looking into my files here. But I already leaked also, by the way, a picture of the Zen 6 APU platform that isn't Halo, and it mentions LPDDR5X. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think it may have actually been a fan on Discord pointed this out. When I've leaked that Medusa Halo, Zen 6 Halo is coming out, unfortunately, in 2027. Yeah, I mean, if you align when LPDDR5 was announced versus when APUs came out from it, it was years later. Lining that up, this would line up with 2027. Medusa Halo may not be until 2027 because it's waiting for LPDDR6. Like that's what it kind of sounds like to me, to anyone wondering why it's taking so long for Halo to come out. Unfortunately. So hopefully the follow-up Halo, Zen 7 Halo, would not take as long. Also, just, there will be a Micro Center ad in this piece of content. But, if you're looking to build a new PC, this isn't part of the ad, but I saw this making headlines that the 9950X is $420 with 32 gigabytes of RAM for free at Micro Center right now. And it's like below $450, I think, on Newegg and a bunch of places too. So I'm very concerned about prices skyrocketing this holiday season. Build your PC now. Things are, I think, the cheapest could be crazy.
Yeah.
This is the cheapest things are going to get. And finally here, we have one more wrap up. Nintendo Switch 2 to face continued shortages, according to a report from Nikkei Asia. I don't have much to say here. But let me see. Online store recently ran they're running lotteries on the online store. But yeah, so again, I don't know. I have my concerns about Switch 2 sales long term, but short term, it's selling well. And as usual, Nintendo did not produce enough to meet demand. Usually, we found this is by design. So there you go. I will say, though, after all the reporting we've done recently on Switch 2 issues and recent broken silicons, I think we can honestly say that don't worry about it. Like, there's probably going to be a Switch 2 OLED. And like, you probably want to wait for that one, don't you think?
Yeah, it's seeming more and more like you do.
Like, oh yeah, and me and Matt from Alderon Games on a recent Broken Silicon talked about this as well. So we'll have the pop up for that if you want to go listen to that. But like, once you summarize all of the problems that have popped up, it really turns into like, give it at least 6 months. And so the good news is that Nintendo thinks you should wait to buy it as well, because they will not let you buy it. All right. Final reader mails. Jensen Wang, all will be Nvidia, writes in and says, what do you think of the geniuses calling the Switch 2 a Gen 10 console? No, I don't keep track of which gen is whatever, but I looked it up, and that means that they think this is part of the PS6 generation. Yeah, I think it's stupid. I consider the Switch 1 a PS4 console and the Switch 2 a PS5 competitor. I don't consider that PS6.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no hard and fast rule. It's coming out smack dab in the middle of two different generations, so I call it Gen 9.5, Gen 9, Gen 10. I mean, I think it's more associated with the PS5 than what the PS6 will be, though.
I mean, the Xbox came out the original Xbox, a year to a year and a half or 2 years after the PS2 launched. Does that make it a PS3 competitor? No, it launched in the middle of the competition, and that's what you compare it to. It is not Gen 10. In fact, if you really want to get pedantic, at least technologically wise, it sure as shit isn't. It uses Ampere. Ampere launched against RDNA 2, which is in the Series X, Series S, and PS5. No, Switch 2 is a Gen 9 console. It is. And you can call it Gen 10 if you want, and they will continue to sell it. But you know what? People still buying PS4s as well. It doesn't make those, Gen 9. Techno writes in, why is it that Radeon is better at concealing leaks than the Ryzen division? You've been talking about Zen 6 since May of 2022, and properly with tons of detail since March of 2023, yet RDNA 5, apart from ray tracing performance, is largely in the dark. A few things. Number one, and this is something that's been explained to me, is I believe there is a complete SoC team for Zen 6, a core architecture team, and a cache team, and then other teams working on IP blocks. Again, I'm not going to get into too much. I don't want to give away my sources on this, but I mean, I know people that work with AMD, not even in the company, that will be working on one part of a thing. And with graphics, it's mostly one package. I mean, yes, there might be people that work on Infinity Cache here and there. But for the most part, it's a smaller amount of teams working on it. I mean, I can think of like 4 or 5 teams working on Zen 6. That's 5 times the surface area for leaks to come out. I also will say I have contacts in multiple teams working on all of these things. So there's that as well. But otherwise, I don't know. There's probably a bit more. I shouldn't say there's more turnover. I don't know. I just, some of it's just luck as well. Like who I happen to be in contact with any given year at which company and which part of the company they're in. And a lot of that's because some people just, they're not interested in, leaks anymore. They don't follow tech anymore, so they talk to me less. Or oftentimes they've switched companies, and sometimes one years there's a lot of people at AMD that are talking to me, if you haven't noticed, as opposed to other years because maybe a lot of them are leaving a certain company. So it's all of that is, I think, so half of it's probably luck, but I do think there's very real reasons and that it would be easier to get leaks about a CPU architecture. In addition to that, look, I think we leak at Moore's Law is dead most of the leaks that are out there at this point. And so if we have a ton of assets in in specific parts of companies, that's why all this stuff is leaking sooner. Because it just happens to be what
you have access to.
Yeah. So if I may toot my own horn, which I think I may, Wood writes in, and he says, "Hi, Tom. Might be outside your contact circle, but is there any news about a real products coming out of the supposedly high-performance ARM and RISC-V shops like Tens Torrent? I'm sure there's plenty of RISC-V development inside of China, but none of that ever hits my radar. Nvidia, Nvidia is still working on laptop APUs, according to what I'm told, like this month. They still are. So those are coming. That's just not a priority for them because it doesn't have it will probably have AI somewhere in the name, but it doesn't get to have AI all over it. So that's not as important to them. As for like RISC-V and ARM, I mean, look, I have contacts at OEMs. If there is something big coming from Qualcomm or someone else on an HP or a Dell or a Lenovo roadmap or something, I might hear about it. I haven't. So right now it's Nvidia entering the fray and there's Qualcomm follow-ups. And yeah, I mean, I might have information for you in the coming months about it, but that's it. I'm not seeing anyone else. All right, final question. Until Fanboy writes in and says, since most new games are going to online only with the continued death of physical media, what is the best method to save our game libraries, or are we just essentially renting out a game license until the game stores shut down? Well, it certainly seems like that on the Xbox side.
I would say most of them are reliable, but don't get things from sinking ships, probably.
Does anyone doubt PlayStation is going to be around in 20 years or Steam? I don't. So that's,
Yeah, and if you're very paranoid, like Sony is at least still paying lip service to physical media, even if they make you jump through some hoops now to do it. Sony still has physical media.
Yeah. So now there is this stop killing games movement going on right now, and I might actually have that guest on in the coming weeks to talk about this big push that is starting to get maybe a little bit of traction in the EU. Always the EU these days that cares about their consumers, but thank God they do. That might actually put forth some laws so that your game has to work in perpetuity within reason. Like, it's not their job to fix it on future hardware, but there's some traction with that right now. And I would say, look, support the companies that have physical offerings, support the stores that have a track record of not deleting your content, and support stop killing games and stuff like that. And maybe we will get some legislation where they say, hey, look, no, you don't have to keep selling something forever, but if you make it, you can't have it require the store to operate if you close the store. Like, that's a very simple law you could make. And then you could have backup services, let you re-download the game for free. And then that would be on the publisher to maybe think twice about how they handle the closing of their games. Like, where they're like, well, we're not going to support it anymore. So not only are we stopping updates, we're killing your ability to buy it and removing it from your system. Maybe they would have to go, nope, you can still play it. We can't just do that to hopefully screw you with a remaster or something. There can still be a remaster, but technically if you've already downloaded it, you get to keep playing it. Like, I think that would be pretty much the most we can hope for, but I think it's more achievable than you might think.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the age of DRM and all that, while it's not gone, I think it's gotten a bit better than when it was at its most worrying. So
Games for Windows Live and
I mean, there's clearly been some pushback to it already that succeeded.
Yeah. So yeah, right. And so like, because there you still have games with tons of DRM here and there, but I feel like a lot of devs, not all, have backed away. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. At least the games I've played, I've noticed some pulling back from how much DRM they load up. So I think the worst was like what, the PS3 and 360 gen to my memory, and how much it impacted the experience.
That's when they really wanted to go for it. Was like, remember when the Xbox One was going to be a DRM box?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like late PS3, early Xbox One. Yeah, that was where you had all types of a confluence of things where it was the worst. So things can improve. And again, the best we could do is support the people that try to do that. And look, dude, vote with your wallets and just vote with your ability to vote. And things can happen, where maybe we could make this better.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, that is going to do it for this. Once again, may I say, rather girthy episode. I don't know if I may say that in your opinion.
You did, but
so. I think if you had any say in it, I wouldn't.
Probably, yeah.
But I want to thank you, of course, for joining me once again, Dan. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. Ring the bell button, like, share, comment below. All of that helps a ton. Also, subscribe to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice. Give us a review there. We are now part of the Believe Podcast Network. Getting the numbers up in the podcast app would help a lot, right? Apps would help a lot right now, actually, as well. Probably disproportionately to YouTube, so please make sure you are subscribed to that. And then, as always, the best way to support us, you can check out our sponsors below, and we hope that you do, but support us on Patreon as well. We just had a new Die Shrink come out. That's an over hour long. Let me do the thing that makes you laugh half the time. Like early review of and feedback from my Strix Halo testing. There's over an hour there of content. Already I have tons of surprises in my testing for Strix Halo, especially the HP laptop, that differ from what other reviewers said. I don't think there's been enough good reviews of this thing. Either the firmware is better now, something's changed. I don't know. I know there was some battery issue maybe with the early models, but it is doing things in a good way that a lot of reviews said it didn't do or didn't do well enough. So lowest tier on Patreon gets you access to that, and of course hundreds of other Die Shrink episodes, a Discord. We can submit questions and so on and so forth, including questions to guests. So please, if you have the extra couple of dollars or more a month, support us on Patreon. And otherwise, Dan, any final words?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, let us end before I say thank you for watching. Thank you for listening like 4 times like I do half the time near the end when I start rambling, trying to remember what I have to say. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and have a good rest of your week, everybody.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the about/support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans,
much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit. And give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels:
Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Jits, Daniel D, Deke, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel Hyde, MJB1, Toka, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Compressed AI Blocks, Jerem Ferrier, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastra, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Sammy Malas, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Chrysantheanos, Jonathan, Nithra Zink, Amiable Chief, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, I Should, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Meat and Pork, Ian Clifford, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Mad, Zutsu Taylor, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cake, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Cole Addict, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Win Wang, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Reginald Ari, Teak Autumn, Winstar, Corey Leonard, James I. Raider, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, John Swin, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Harlan, Jason Angima, Joseph Kelly, Slushpaw, Him Segung, Tails2299, Brian Wright, Sisyphos7771, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Alex Vega, Michael Cozy, Thalo215, Crystal Joe, Elbergun, Kcom Solarized 80, 37x73, Sprutnik, Ryan P, Hoodat42, Cornster 671, Penta Winter, Hal Richard, State Farm Steak, Omega Doge, Mr. Tiger, Hugo Ander, Kiwi, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI Soldier 789, Porcelain Oats, Curry King 3, Nick Zeusmania, Fred Burger, Rye Hill, Chi Bowl, Smash Axley, Sheriff Lotfi, Karim Almarzi, Kevin Kuntz, Manolis, Rag Kusis, Armand Vakatura, Jonathan Harris, Callan, Reichel, Elusive Man, Kainush, Kagani, Zubair, Ahmed, Bajorn, Toft, Johnny Trans, and Angel of Cake. And as always, thank you to Sahara for the music.